Doing good. You, Jevon?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for asking. Thanks for having me on today. Looking forward to it.
No problem.
Yeah.
Hello, Jevon. Thanks for taking the time to chat with Mayhem Rockstar magazine about Noble Poets. When was Noble Poets founded?
Noble Poets was founded 4 years ago, but I've been writing lyrics for almost 20 years. So, Lion Rock Records, which is my label, I had the idea of Lion Rock Records back in 2007, but Caleb and I formed 4 years ago, and created Noble Poets. And the people ask me, why the name Noble Poets? And it's because we wanted to have nobility and sincerity in our message, right? I didn't want to just put something out that I didn't live. So all of our music, there's no exaggeration in what we're doing. Everything that we're doing is exactly, what happened to me as a kid, what happened as an adolescent, what happened as an adult, and then shifting into where we are now. So, in the hip hop game, a lot of it that I hear is not real, right? So with Noble Poets, we wanted to bring a realness and a sincerity to the audience, and I wanted to give my story and what I walked through as I believe as a gift to humanity. And we had to do that by being honest and being authentic to the story. So that's where Noble Poets, what we were formed out of.
What got you into rapping during the pandemic a little bit more?
I've got a really nice recording studio, and being the fact that we weren't allowed to go anywhere or do anything, you got to find your vision, you got to find your purpose, right?
Oh yeah.
Getting in the recording studio, I have a CrossFit gym in my garage. I built an oasis here at my house where we could be thriving in the midst of chaos happening all around us, right? The world was essentially being undone at the seams to a degree, right? So humanity was changing, right before our eyes, and I didn't want to let the negativity that was attached with everything that's been happening affect me internally. So my choice was okay, we're going to double down. Let's write more. Let's produce more. I got on a really, really very intense eating program. And I was like, okay, if things are going to get really hard out there, I want to make it really, really good inside. So, connecting with my kids at a deeper level. I bought a new house during the pandemic, and that's how I built this bigger recording studio, right? So the kids were outside playing in the pool, right? You don't have to have a mask when you're jumping in the water, right? And we weren't going around, going out or doing anything. So I just built. Caleb and I were just like, man, let's double down in the studio. And some days we were working like 18 hours a day. So, for me, the pandemic was, we could look at it anyway. Everybody could have a different perspective. For me, I turned it into a blessing, is what I did. I didn't like what was happening, right? I don't want to hear people dying and people sick, and that's terrible. But we had to turn something really, really hard into something really, really good, and that's really Noble Poets' vision as well, right? Like, you got a really, really nasty story, and it got turned into something that is got hope in it.
Let's talk a little bit about your past experiences that helped you find a new light to voice your life experiences with your rap.
Yeah, so my life got changed when my friend got shot in the head next to me, right? We had 140 grand in the trunk. My friend got shot in the head twice next to me, and the gun jammed in my head, right? A couple months later, my house got raided, and I had 105 pounds on the property, hash manufacturing operation. CPS took my 5-year-old daughter. I made a decision in that moment that I was never going to go back to that life. That was my wake-up call. And everybody's wake up call can look different. It may not be as dramatic as mine was. I needed to have that happen in order for me to wake up. I took that story and started writing lyrics in mid 2003. And I just used, I use these med comp books right here. I got a couple hundred of these filled up with lyrics. I got about 20 albums worth of material. And I first just started using the med comp books as my diary, but I was writing out my diary, like my journals, I was writing them out in lyrical format, right? I hadn't made beats at the time. I wasn't a music producer, but I could hear the beat in my head because I was raised on listening to hip hop from the age of like 9 years old, right? So I could hear the beat in my head, but I just wasn't capable yet to be able to produce the beat. So I started writing down my life in lyrical format in these journals. So like I said, I got about 20 albums worth of material, and that all came out of a life experience of, everything that happened to me as a kid, and then to being a runaway, and then to being a drug dealer that was moving $1 million to $3 million a month, and then my friend getting shot, and then my daughter being taken, and now being 17 years away from, I haven't medicated in 17 years. So I'm not even close to that life or that person that I used to be, but a lot of people are still in that place. And so, the music is very applicable to where people's lives could be potentially at, but then it also can give them an understanding of what can happen if we choose to change, right? We choose to make a different choice. So.
What really surprised me is that your rapping is nothing I have heard before, and it's not your normal rapping that you would hear. It's so heartfelt and meaningful and relates to a lot of people. How did you relay that message to your fans about that?
That's a good question. Being honest with my storytelling, that level, like, did you see the video Humpty Dumpty?
Yeah.
That's actually my real therapist that's in that video.
Wow, that's amazing.
And he was leading me in a therapy session in front of the whole camera crew, bro. Like, so I'm crying, you know what I mean? I'm a very emotional, passionate guy. And the only way that I could get that message across in everything that we're doing is going back to those places of where I was when that was happening. And so for the fan base, and I don't really consider it a fan base, I consider it more of a massive family. You know what I mean? It's like a movement that we're starting.
Yeah.
And being part of that movement, like my heart is not guarded when I'm doing what I'm doing. You get the raw me, right? And it's the same thing with Caleb when he's singing. Like, you get the raw, you get the vulnerable, you get the real, you get the authentic. Like, we're not making stuff up to try to entertain people, so to speak. We're actually really trying to get in and let the music be the driving force to bring change in people's lives. So that goal is it's working, to be honest with you.
This truly has been a trying time during the COVID pandemic, and fans alike and myself are so glad to have found your music to try and break through this dark time we are all having.
Nice, man. I super appreciate hearing that, because when I read the stats, I'm really big on stats. We're at the highest level of addiction that we've ever been in the history of our country. We're at the highest level of domestic abuse that we've ever been in this country. We're at the highest level of divorce that we've ever been in this country. That's why we put this music out at this time. I believe we are actually in the darkest time that we've ever been in the history of this country, period.
I think so too.
I think it's darker than it was during the Depression. Now, my grandfather was alive during the Depression, and he's talked to me about it, and it was bad, right? But I think this is different because we actually have been isolated, right? During the Depression, there wasn't a pandemic. Everybody was able to come together and kind of get everybody's back to make it through the Depression. With this, we're we've needed to be in our homes for a majority of the time. Well, humans are designed for connection. We're not just designed to connect on Instagram and Facebook and Twitch, and you know what I mean? Like, we're designed to like give you a hug, like,
Yeah.
hey, hey, what's up? How are you? You know, like shake your hand, like have a coffee together, go out to dinner together. Like, that's what life is about. And that has been removed because of this pandemic.
Yeah, because I'll give you an example. Because me and my husband, we moved in right at the height of the pandemic, and lockdown hit, and we're just like nowhere to go, and we're stuck in the house for 8 months doing nothing
Yeah.
except going to work. It's like, what are we supposed to do?
Man, I am
It's
so,
terrible. It's like now everything's slowly opening up, but if is it going to go backwards again? Because the numbers are going back up again.
yeah, man, I know. What state are you in?
Ohio.
Oh, you're in Ohio?
Yeah, and the numbers are really bad. The last 2 weeks they've been almost 50,000.
You know, I'm in California, and man, it's bad here. And you know, thank God that you have somebody. You know, I'm a single father raising two kids, you know, by myself, and that's not a woe is me story, but it's very challenging because I don't really see anybody besides Caleb. And you know, Caleb's trying to make it through being a 20-year-old, you know what I mean? Like, you know, and he doesn't have a girlfriend, and I you know, it's just like you said, it's a very, very dark, challenging time. And you know, I just hope, and I say I hope, that the music will bring hope to others, that people feel loved when they're hearing what we're doing, like they're hearing the rawness of what's coming out of me. And I wouldn't do this, man. I'm gonna tell you, these videos are humiliating for me. They're very, very hard to go through, right? That's my childhood on blast, right? That's me being an adolescent runaway on blast. And you know, the next video is, you know, about my daughter being taken from me. Like, this is hard stuff.
Oh yeah.
But I wanted to help people, because there's always light at the end of the tunnel if we can choose to look at it. I don't want humanity to stay in this dark place.
No.
I hate it, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
I want everybody to get their lives back.
Exactly.
You know?
But we don't know when that's going to be either.
No, that's the thing. It's like, well, when does this end?
It's like, when does it end? Because our hospitals are getting overrun. They're having the National Guard helping out, and I'm like, that should not ever happen.
Man, I just got over the Omicron variant. And you know, I could barely move for like 10 days. I mean, I'm like sick, bro. Like, man, there was a point where in the middle of the night, it was like 3 a.m., where I was like, I honestly felt like I was going to die. I was that sick, and it scared me. It really, really scared me. And my heart breaks for, what about all these people that are older than us, that don't have the immune systems to fight this off? Right?
Right.
Like, what, you know, anybody who's not a narcissist, if they're not looking at the greater good right now in comparison to what humanity was and where it is now, like, my heart just breaks for families. My heart breaks for society. Like, we are designed as people to come together in unity and love one another, and that is not what's happening right now. And that's, you know, we're very divided. And yeah, so that, you know, I just hope the music, even if it's just one person, you know what I mean? Honestly, if one person's life gets changed, I always have this motto: if one person's life gets changed by what we're doing, then it was all worth it to me. And I really say that to every person that I come in contact with. If it helps your life, we won. This wasn't about making a bunch of money. It wasn't about getting a bunch of fame. It wasn't about a bunch of notoriety. It wasn't about all that. And it's not going to have, Noble Poets will never be about that. It is about helping others. That is the root of why we're doing what we're doing.
Exactly. The different advantage of the music is different that you see from rappers having that gangster rap, and the difference between you and Caleb with the rapping and clean singing. What inspired you to create that?
I probably being raised. So if anybody was going to write gangster rap, it could have been me. I was moving $1 million to $3 million a month when I was 20 years old. I was living a life that these guys who were rapping, they never even lived. And if anybody was going to write that life, that could have been me. I wanted to flip it, and actually Caleb and I coming together wanted to help people understand that that's a dead end road. It almost got me killed. It got my daughter taken from me. You know what I mean? Like, I had massive messes I had to clean up. I wanted to shed light on that. You don't hear very much with rappers, you don't hear about all the, if they were crack dealers or if they were weed dealers or whatever they were selling. You don't really hear a lot about the hardship of what happened to them in that game. You just hear about the glamour and the money and it's just not real. And when my friend got shot in the head, I figured out real quick that everything that I had done was damaging. I was not helping people. I was actually hurting people, right? And so that message that's coming across in our music, I've never met anybody that has been in the drug game that has some happy ending story to tell when they're done. They either end up in prison, they're dead, or they have a situation like I had where they barely made it out and they're just thankful every single day that they're even breathing. You know what I mean? That's how bad it can get if you stay in that type of lifestyle,
Oh, definitely. And from looking at and watching the video of Humpty Dumpty and Never Fit In, you could tell that both of you went through a lot of pain in your childhood.
Yeah, Caleb, it's kind of crazy because he's actually he had the exact opposite childhood that I had, right? He has loving parents. He's been sober, his whole life. He actually has had to go against the grain to be able to step into that pain that I went through, right? He hasn't had those things actually happen to him. That, Never Fit In, that's my son that's playing me in that video as a child, right? Wow. Yeah. So my son's never had that stuff happen to him. I've never, as a kid, I had sexual abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, and verbal abuse. Those are the things that happened to me as a kid. My son has had none of those, right? None of my children have had those things happen to them. So they don't really know. They don't know what it's like to live that life. But Caleb has this very unique capability to be able to step outside of himself and step into my mind. Wow. And that's why we have such a good partnership. And that's why, I always say, how is it possible for my best friend to be, 20 years younger than me? How is he able to do that? It is literally, he's a walking miracle. So for him to get inside my brain, he writes all the hooks on everything that we do. So I write the lyrics, we co-produce the music together. And then he writes the hook based upon what I'm saying in the lyrics, which is so crazy because normally you would think that he would have went through a lot of pain and a lot of trauma. How does he do that? Man, I just call it an act of God because it's a miracle. Like, I don't know how else to put it, in words, but it's not normal, that's for sure. So he's an absolute gift and such a loyal friend, and it's coming through in the music, man. You can tell how connected Caleb and I are in the music.
Yeah, you guys are just in sync.
Exact, bro. You hit it on the head. Yeah, we're in sync. Yep.
Far, this is one of the best upcoming rappers I have seen in a long time that has potential to go really far.
Oh, thank you for saying that, man. That's really that's a huge compliment to hear. I never really like in my head have wanted to compete with anybody. Like the rap game is very competitive, and it's like, oh, I did a better verse than you. Well, here's the deal. if you put a Picasso painting and a Monet on the wall, right? Is one a better painting than the other? Or is it just the way your eyes are looking at the painting? Right? I'm more of a Monet guy. I like Monet paintings. They speak more to me. As to Picasso, I'm not feeling Picasso as much as I am Monet. And that might be the same thing with music. I don't think that these rappers should be living in a place of competing with one another. And they do that by how many records they're selling, how much clout there's been given, like M has sold like 200 million records, right? I had somebody on a podcast yesterday kind of, compare me to Eminem. It's like, I'm not really in it. I'm not in competition with M. He's had a completely different career. He's had a completely different, the last 20 years of his life has been a lot different than mine. We're both telling our story. I don't really feel that I'm in competition with any other rapper, but the compliment that you just gave me, I'm super thankful to hear it, because we put so much effort into the music, right? We wanted to make sure it was done really well. And that, I think that's the biggest compliment that Caleb and I could get, is that you're enjoying the music when you hear it, right? It's mixed really well. We had Head from Korn, his guy, mix our stuff. And,
wow, that's amazing. That's really amazing.
Yeah. So Head he's a dear friend of mine, and he's gotten behind our music. So that's been really great. There's a track that Head and I did that's coming out on the record, The Beautiful Flaw. So that's like a totally different sound that people haven't even heard yet. So that's going to be just really cool. So, yeah.
So how did you find Caleb?
The same. Okay. That's a good question. The guy that introduced me to Head in 2013 is the same guy that introduced me to Caleb 4 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. He called me and was like, "Hey, you gotta meet this kid." And I was like, at the time, I was like, man, I don't want to meet any kids. Like, I'm in the middle of, raising kids, and I'm in the middle of, writing and doing what I'm doing. But my friend was like, "Hey, I need a favor from you." Like, and he used this verbiage. He goes, "How did it work out when you met Head?" And I was like, "All right, bro, I wouldn't have met Head if it wasn't for you. I wouldn't even be friends with Head if it wasn't for you. All right, bring him to my house." And so Caleb showed up at my house in my studio, and he brought a track with him. And I heard 2 lines of his voice, and I was like, go time, let's go. And we've been working thick as thieves ever since.
Oh yeah.
So that's how I met Caleb. And yeah, we've been pretty much inseparable, since, I mean, we probably have 40 or 50 tracks that we've worked on, and we'll release 2 EPs this year, combine those 2 EPs and add 4 more tracks to the full record. So Noble Poets is going to drop 3 projects this year.
Jeez.
Yeah. So
that's a lot of music.
Yeah, man. It's like you said, it's a really dark time, and we want to try to shed light in the midst of this great darkness that we're in. So
how excited were you when you found out you would be on the Talk to Me podcast?
Oh man, it was awesome. Jamie called and she was like, "Oh, I've got an interview set up for you." The coolest thing for me was that she told me that you really enjoyed our music. So that's when I was like, whenever somebody's actually enjoying the art, it makes it so enjoyable for me, because I'm getting to know you. I'm actually getting to embrace your thoughts and your feelings about what you've heard and what you saw with the videos. So that was a huge deal for me in general. So first thing that came to my mind was I'm thankful. I have gratitude, right? So
when I was watching Never Fit In and Humpty Dumpty, I was interested in how you guys got to be able to find that burnt building to be able to film in.
Which building?
The one that was burnt down in the video.
Okay, so this is a really cool story. I love that you're asking this, man. When I was 4 years old, I came home. My grandmother drank herself to death, and she died at like 56 years old, right? The last time I remember having a good time with my grandma was her birthday. And I came home from her birthday and our house was burnt down. My friend's house had just burnt down. And I called him and I said, hey, I'm not trying to capitalize on something that just happened to you. That's not okay. I said, Jonathan, I said, my house burnt down as a kid and I want to do Never Fit in this burnt down house. Can we use your house? And he said, go do whatever you got to do. Just don't get hurt. I mean, that place was a mess, bro. There was like nails and metal all over the place. I mean, it was a hard place to film. Right. And, I think I've been on like seven or eight interviews. Right. And you're the first person that actually noticed and asked that question. So that notice is really cool because that was very traumatic for me as a kid, being so young. All I had left, bro, was my gosh darn, you remember Eeyore from Disneyland?
Yeah, I remember Eeyore.
I had an Eeyore stuffed animal and it was in the car. And I'm sitting here squeezing on Eeyore, watching my house burn down. We came home to the house completely in flames, fire trucks around all over the place. It's one of the youngest memories of trauma that I had. Like, everything was gone. It was, burnt up. So to do that in the burnt down house, that was powerful for me. We actually changed location. That wasn't the original location. When my friend's house burnt down, that I made the phone call and I was like, hey, can we use this? And so we shifted and just did the location there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What are some of your music experiences?
You mean experience? Do you mean experience like who I've worked with, or do you mean experience like what has brought me to this point as an artist?
What has brought you to this point too as an artist?
So I went to composition school. When I started writing lyrics, I couldn't find a producer that could get my sound that was in here. Like, the sound was in here the whole time. I just didn't know how to, like, right now in my studio, I can pull out my table right here and I've got an 88 weighted key piano and all my drum machines. Everything's in here ready to go, right? I didn't know how to use any of that stuff. So I went to learn how to read and write music at a college in Fresno. And then I went to sound engineering school at San Francisco State. And they have a program there where every one of my teachers was a Grammy winner. Everyone had won a Grammy that were my teachers. And the program is just, man, it's absolutely phenomenal. So I lived in the city, went to school at night, and learned how to, fine tune my craft in regards to using Pro Tools, using native instruments, learning how to mix and engineer and get the sound that I want. Because it's one thing to be able to play the sound. It's another thing to actually be able to EQ it, mix it, you know what I mean? And we didn't mix our stuff, but when we send it to Joe to mix it, we already have the sound in mind. So we do a pre-mix on it. And so we already have the sound in mind that we want. So those experiences going through, I learned how to read and write music from one of the most highly trained classical pianists in Central California, right? So she'd been playing piano for 60 years and she was a professor at the college. I mean, she was just one of the sweetest, most loving people that I've ever met. And so learning how to read and write music was a really big deal, because I could then take my lyrics that were in here or in my comp books, then I could make the sound that was matching those lyrics. And that was part of the problem. I paid some producers from Nashville, almost 20 grand, and they couldn't get the sound that I wanted. They just could not, it just wouldn't work. So I came to the conclusion, okay, I'm going to have to learn to mix. I'm going to have to learn to produce. I'm going to have to learn to write. I'm going to have to learn to do everything myself. That's, I believe, why it's also taken so long to get this sound out that we wanted. I'm a perfectionist like most artists. And I'd always be like, it's not ready. It's not ready. It's not ready. Well, I started working with Head in 2013, and, we'd send him tracks and the music just kept getting better and better and better till him and I finally recorded and did a track together. But Caleb and I started working on our stuff like right after I got done with recording with Head. So we started carving our sound out, and then we started sending more tracks to Head, and then we realized it was ready, like it was time. So we went through 7 engineers to get to Joe, who used to be the drummer for Red. We got to him, and he's one of the best engineers that I've actually ever had the chance to work with. So those experiences brought me everything that I've done, everything I've put in, all the seed that I've sown, all those experiences has made it to why I believe Noble Poets sounds so good. You know what I mean?
How can your family find you on social media?
Noble Poets Music on Instagram, Noble Poets on Facebook. We have a website, noblepoets.com. And then, yeah, those are pretty much the three outlets. And then we also have a YouTube channel people can subscribe to, which is Noble Poets as well. So you'll get, on the YouTube channel, it's cool because you subscribe and then you get all the updates. We let you know when the drop's coming, and then on Spotify and Apple Music, you can subscribe to those channels on there as well. And then you'll also get, what's called a radar alert from your artists that you subscribe to. So that's super fun because then people know that the video is being released and when it's coming out. And, we got another one that's going to be dropping in March. So, yeah, the more people that subscribe, the bigger the family gets, and the more awareness that we're actually bringing to sobriety and mental health, and we're all helping one another. That's what's cool about it. So, like I said, I'm not really big on calling people fans, right? Like I want everybody to feel like they're part of something, right? Like it's just one big huge family. That's loving one another well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jevon, for this very heartfelt and meaningful interview. And we wish the best in your career and stay safe during the pandemic.
Yeah, man. I really appreciate you having me on today, and look forward to hopefully seeing you in the future.